Catalog sales advertisers. History shows your costs are going to be going down in the month of September. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we're going to go through what the forecast shows, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to, what the projection models say your results could actually look like, and the 3 plays you can run to maximize your results and prepare for Q4. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the September 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for Catalog Sales Advertisers. I'm John Belcher, the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying. I'm excited to show you what's around the corner for your campaigns for the next 30 days. Before we dive in, just want to explain what we do here at Decyphered. We help our clients win at the scaling game. Paid traffic is a game. It's a never-ending game of figuring out how to unlock your next level of scale. This game is composed of levels. So far, we've found that there are 7 of them. Winning at this game is about having a game plan. You need clarity on what you need to focus on right now so you can beat your current level and unlock the next one. And one of the most important things of doing this is understanding your cost environment. Paid traffic is not always up and to the right. Cost environment has a huge impact on results, and that's exactly why we created this forecast. So let's dive into your forecast for the month of September. Here's what we're going to go through. 4 things. The September outlook, what the last 5 years tells us is likely in store for you as a catalog sales advertiser. Ross is going to go through the hot spots and the cold spots, specific dates you need to pay attention to, and the actions you may need to take. Then I'm going to go through the projection models, what your numbers could look like depending on what you focus on. And then finally, I'm going to go through the cost environment playbook, 3 actions you can take to maximize your results and or prepare for the future. All right. So when we talk about the September outlook, I want to explain how this forecast was created. My job is to develop projections for our clients to help them understand what's likely around the corner. And so how I did this is I looked at 5-year meta historicals for the 4 major conversion types, looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in spend. And I developed a projection model that we applied against our current funnel performance and found we could project within 5% of actuals for clients spending $1 million a month or more. What's really important for you to understand about this is that the percentages apply across platforms. So while we use Meta to develop this model, when we've tested this, it applies to Meta, Google, Native, and it's starting to apply to AppLovin as more advertisers are coming on board. At the end of the day, this is a forecast, not a prophecy. It gives us a good understanding of what's coming up, but things can change. Just like the weather, it may say it's going to rain and it doesn't, or they may say sunny skies and all of a sudden it pours. Our goal is just to try and give you an understanding of what's likely to happen based off history. So this overall is what we're expecting for catalog sales in the month of September. From the beginning of the month to the end of the month, your CPMs are going to go down 12.9%. But as you can see here, it's not a steady slope. It's going to have some action, which Ross will talk through. Ultimately, what's important for me is that I know you're a performance advertiser. You probably don't care about CPMs. You care about CPAs and ROAS, and that makes complete sense. What's important for you to understand is there is a linear correlation between CPM changes and your performance results, and that's what we're digging to in this forecast. All right, Ross, let's dig in and talk about hot spots and cold spots.
So in this month, really cool, not too much movement, but let's quickly just talk about what a hot spot and a cold spot is before we dive in further. And essentially a hot spot is a drastic increase in CPM in a short space of time, or a drastic decrease in CPM in a very short space of time. And the reason why these are important is because they cause high volatility, and that's where things really change and become uncomfortable. But some really good news, there are none for the month of September for catalog advertisers. However, it is worth calling out that we're starting to change from higher cost to lower cost. And that's indicated by, as you can see in our heat map graph, we're going from the yellow to the green. And that transition should start at around the 22nd of September. So that's a good sign, and that's great. So no hot and cold spots to speak about, John. However,
so one thing to explain here really quickly is the reason that we see a downslope here, but this is not considered a cold spot. We have a mathematical model. It's a percentage change. It's a pretty drastic increase, but it's not in a short enough period of time. And so just calling out, that's why Ross is saying this data is important. It doesn't qualify as a cold spot, but it's close.
100%. And I think just the key thing is that we're just transitioning into a lower cost period. John will go into the playbook about what we should be doing and how we take advantage of this, but this is kind of when we're seeing the downward trend. Saying that though, this kind of guides us into our next section here, is we always will look at a 12-month calendar and look at the big events every month. And these are things that affect all advertisers, whether you're in catalog or whatever you're advertising. And we say, well, what are the things that are going to impact us in the next month? And these are events like election events or big brand advertiser dumps where they're buying up CPMs. And for the month of September, there are two that are quite significant. We're coming up to the end of the quarter, which is Q3, as well as the end of the month at the same time. So we've got them stacked. Therefore, there's an indication around the 18th to the 30th. It is longer because of the end of quarter, which we've seen. And essentially what we're saying is the costs are likely to come down. However, if there are other volatility elements, these could be very likely linked to end of quarter or end of month purchasing trends from these big brand advertisers that need to get rid of budget. Otherwise, they lose them.
And just to quickly explain here, this main graph is looking at competition just among catalog sales advertisers. These are your direct competitors. This seasonal piece is really important because this affects everyone regardless of objective. These big brand advertisers, if we look at CPMs as a pie, when big brands buy CPMs like this at the end of a quarter, end of a month, they're just taking out a big chunk of the pie. And so while you may see better performance numbers at the end of the month, you're probably not going to see the volume you're accustomed to because the number of available impressions for performance advertisers is smaller. And so that's kind of how these things stack together. Thanks for walking us through that, Ross. All right. As now we're going to talk through projection models, what the numbers actually say your performance is going to look like. My job is to go through and tell our clients, here's what we can expect in the coming days. So I built this projection model. I care about viewing the CPM impact on results. So what does the cost environment mean for the overall P&L? Couple variables we consider is the number of selling days, which I've highlighted yellow because September has one fewer selling days than August. And so it's really important as you're developing your projections. If your client or your business is saying, hey, we want to do what we did last month, well, you have one fewer days to do it. And so it's really important that you take that into account when you're developing your projections. And then on top of that, conversion rate changes. I always use supplements as the example because August is terrible for supplements with conversion rates. And we typically see a rebound in September. So if you have historical data, it's important to consider this in when you're developing your projections. The result is what we can expect from our evergreen production. So evergreen is campaigns that we're always running, not flighted stuff, not short-term things. What can we expect our proven base to produce this month compared to what it did last month? And the conclusion we get from this is A, what do the numbers look like? And then B, what are the actions we need to take and how risky should they be depending on what we're expecting? So the easiest way to go through and explain this is what do lower CPMs mean for you? Well, if you spend $100,000 in the month of August, as you spend $100,000 in the month of September, you're going to be reaching 12.9% more people for the same amount of spend. And a lot of people go, well, why do we care about CPMs, John? Because at the end of the day, this is just a volume game. So when you can reach more people for the same amount of spend, and I've just gone through and laid out here a standard e-com sales process, you're getting more impressions, which means you're probably going to have a similar click-through rate. You're probably going to have a similar page load rate. You're probably going to have a similar add to cart rate. You're probably going to have a similar purchase rate. So when you can put more people through your funnel for the same amount of spend, you're going to get better ROI. That's really what this is all about. So I use this process to go through and develop our projections. I'll lay in from our funnel perspective. Here's what happened in August. So let's say we spent $100,000. We did 1,000 sales at $100 cost per sale. Our average revenue per sale was $150. Did $150,000 in total revenue and a 1.5 ROAS. If we just wanted to maintain our same spend, our CAC is going to go down by that 13%, right? It's roughly just as long as the performance is the same. I have not adjusted for days, so just trying to give you a plain example here. We're seeing lower CAC, same revenue per sale, and that gives us a higher ROAS, 1.72. If for some reason you've got an inventory crunch or something and the client says, hey, we can't do more than 1,000 sales. All right, well, we can reduce our spend to 75,000 and do that same 1,000 sales. But once again, our CAC goes down even more, which means our ROAS goes up. And then finally, on cost per sale, if the client says, hey, we actually want to maintain that $100 cost per sale, we can push up into our spend and actually spend $131,000 and do that same 1.5 ROAS. So that's kind of how this shakes out. There's going to be some more room for breathing in this month. And this is kind of how we go through and set the expectations for our clients. So conclusions of this: costs are down, results are up. And so the actions you should be taking is trying new, riskier stuff, as well as preparing for Q4. This is the time to do it because it's going to get bloody over the next few months. So now's the time to try stuff that has higher risk because you can afford that cost of testing. And so as we move into our cost environment playbook, every month I want to give you 3 things that you could consider trying. When we talk about these higher risk actions, I built these in when it comes down to the amount of lift. So the first one is our highest lift plays. I want to talk about SamCart checkout testing. This is an interesting opportunity. Then we talk about our medium lift plays. It will require some work, but it's not crazy. Talking through Marpipe. And then finally, our low lift plays are our fallback ads and SKUs. So from a checkout testing perspective, let me start by saying this. I understand that if you're running e-com, you may be using Shopify or you may be using WooCommerce or something like this. Trying out a new order system doesn't sound very appetizing, right? You got to migrate product catalogs. You got everything set up. You got to set up all of your payment processors, all of that. The goal for me here is to try and spot opportunities in the market for the people that we talk to say, is there something we could do to help you improve performance? And so this for me would be a minimum viable test. SamCart has gone through and created this new slide checkout, which layers on top of stores. And I love, I'll show you the metrics here in a second of what they were able to prove with their existing clients. But this removes the need for people to migrate off of the page, right? They can just click the add to cart. This slides out and you can check out right on the page. And so if whatever you're using doesn't have this capability, this is something that could be really interesting for you to test. You set up a new URL with a different checkout process and see if this makes a difference. Do it with one product. Do it with your, a top performing product. Ross is going to talk through the mechanics of how we do this in a second, but they talked about an 82% increase in revenue for some sellers. So it might make sense for you to try out. And I put this screenshot that they had, their checkout A/B test. Their slide checkout, so with a standard 2-column checkout, CAC was $94, their embedded was $46, and their slide checkout was $31.29. It's almost a 50% increase in conversion. This is something where it's like, hey, we got to set up one product, payment processors, and see if it makes a difference. And if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. I know it's going to be a lot of lift to get it set up, but it might make sense to try. Ross, let's talk through the mechanics on how you do this with a supplemental feed.
So I think what, advertisers, especially if you're using, like you're running a Shopify store, one thing that you're trying to establish here is seeing if a different checkout mechanism can get you a better result. And I think this needs to be clear in our minds. We're not trying to move to a different tech stack, but you've paid a lot of money to get a customer right there where it's time to take their money. And if you can improve that rate, that is a huge, huge deal. In terms of how I would do this and how we've done some of this, and in a previous role, I've done a lot of e-commerce stuff. We had a situation where we had a throwaway traffic domain, and it was a WordPress website. We were able to quickly test, put up a mock PDP, so just a product page, and you could set that up pretty simply. Set up even a mock product, which is just a duplicate, or a supplemental feed with an alternative URL, and run that product set in isolation on its own as a test, put some traffic behind it, and see if that checkout is just getting a higher percent compared to your control. This is a really easy system. And John, you and I know when we're proposing tech stack changes to client, this is a big deal because it potentially affects refunds and all these sorts of things. And this is why I think you've put it as kind of the high lift section here, is that there is a lot of effort here. But these 1% changes, these are massive. These are a massive deal. And these can prove really, really game changing and making a massive difference, especially going into Q4, where this kind of thing can potentially give you massive uplift. And to close on that, you and I have done some tests to give you an idea of what kind of changes we've seen. We've changed a headline on a form, and yes, it wasn't a checkout form. That proved with a 1% uplift, but gave us, how much was it, John? Like in terms of bottom line revenue, just in terms of the traffic metrics, gave us a bit of room to breathe in terms of CPA.
Yeah, it lowered our CAC about $20 and allowed us to scale an extra $10,000 a day. Like it was massive.
And that's a headline. Never mind an entire checkout process making it easier. And I agree. Like, I think Samcart is really innovative with this and makes it really easy. You built a mock-up for a client in an hour. So this is really something that's worth the effort.
Yeah. And so just to circle back on the experiment, all I would do is one of your top performing products, dupe whatever page you're sending it to, and swap out the mechanism. And then, as Ross said, put that in a supplemental feed, put a little bit of spend behind it, and see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't, kill it. Don't worry about it. Don't mention it again. But it's just one of those things that, especially with Samcart, you as the marketer media buyer could go set this up pretty much by yourself. You may have to work with, the back end on payment processing, but you can do a small test, set up webhooks to get order data, make sure fulfillment receives things. It doesn't have to be insane. And you can do as a very small test just to see if it makes a difference. All right. Second one here is Marpipe. So disclaimer here, we have not used this. We do not do a lot of catalog sales currently with our client base, but I did this a ton in a previous role. And as I've looked at Marpipe as it's become more popular, it provides a ton of things that I would have felt at the time were game changer. So the ability to produce new images really quickly inside of their ecosystem to test out in your product feed would be awesome. Product level videos, quickly developing and testing video ads, which are driving a ton of results for people. And I know, Ross, you and I have talked about that at length. This is a really big area of opportunity. And then finally, automatic SKU trimming. There's a lot of ways you can automate removing low performing products, but it's just a fail safe. Once again, if you don't have that in place, it's something you can consider. And what I thought was really cool about their site is they're pulling in live performance metrics. It says this is 650 connected ad accounts that are updated monthly automatically. And so you can see there is a difference here in CTR and ROAS. And this is one of those opportunities that, once again, it's going to require some work to go through and set up. I believe Marpipe is not a cheap product, but it's one of those things when you're heading into a lower cost environment that you can go, hey, maybe we want to play with a little budget and see if this makes a difference. And once again, we have no affiliate relationship with them. Our job is just to spot cool opportunities inside of the marketplace and say, this is something you might consider testing. Ross, you want to add anything?
We know from all the testing we're doing, John, like the big massive difference is the creative. This is a real easy way to plug your SKUs into a tool that is going to really help you. Their language is Canvas style editing that especially if you've got a big SKU list, you can get massive creative diversity in media. So one, changing image to video, as well as like some real good enrichments. These are really, they look really good. So this would be really simple to get your SKUs in here and see how much enrichment could change your SKU list. If it's cost prohibitive, you could potentially get your design team to do some enhancements on a segment of product sets to see if catalog enhancements are going to cause some uplift. But conceptually, nice, easy lift going to a company like Marpipe. I've been following Dan and his team for quite some time. They've moved out onto App 11. Really, really great opportunity if you've got a big SKU list. But if you want to do an MVP, minimum viable product, take a couple of products, do some enrichment, get your creative team to then test that and see if that creative diversity has some higher CTRs and better ROAS. Great call out.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. All right. Last play for you, fallback ad testing. So this is, for you, it would be fallback SKU testing. So this is something that worked in prior lower cost environments. Ross and I built this process to help us do this with this client when we were like, hey, creative team can only turn out so many ads, right? And once again, if we're testing new angles or even iterations, new angles in particular have a lower hit rate. And then iterations are good, but it's also one of those where it's like, if we need something right now, if we're just don't have this huge extended pipeline, or even if we have a new client, can we get something stood up quickly? And so we developed our fallback process. We start with that criteria, ads that spent more than X amount of dollars in the last 180 days, but are off. And then we develop a priority list that we can launch them in batches. So we utilize sets of 3 at a time with the top spenders first. And then the goal is to launch them over weeks, not hours. So focus on parsing them out over a period of time because our goal is to have as many ads, or in your case, SKUs running at one time. So I took a screenshot of how Ross does this. We went through and identified these are ads that are paused. In the last 180 days, they've spent this amount of spend. Do they meet our thresholds? Are they inactive? Have we permanently retired them? So have we tested them as a fallback? They didn't perform and we turned them off, and it's usable. So you can see here we have a nice list of ads that we've gone through and have had success in the past, but are currently off. And this is something where it's like we do 3. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks worth of ad testing. Or if we want to do 6, you cut that in half, it's 5.5 weeks of testing. We have the ability to put new things back into circulation that performed in the past at lower cost environments. Something really simple that you can do and say, hey, maybe we should go reinactivate these SKUs and see how they perform as we head into these lower cost periods. Ross, anything you want to add on the fallback ad testing?
I think this is a really great idea. I think when we get stuck in the weeds, us as media buyers, and even when we're in strategy, we're always focused on the next new thing. And we forget about stuff that we have created. Sometimes we take products that have stopped working and we kind of archive them. And this is a really great way. When we developed this process, it was really enlightening to kind of go back and say, oh man, like I've got a lot of inventory I can put back. There's a lot of creative that has previously performed, and that doesn't mean it's gone. And this was a good reminder to go back and continually recycle this stuff. If you've archived some SKUs because, they didn't sell, this is a good idea to go and look at some of those SKUs, build some product sets to go and test them in isolation. And this is a really simple way to kind of see, hey, man, maybe there's an opportunity to bring this stuff back and scrape a little bit more juice out of the orange.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, if you're heading into this lower cost environment and you can redeploy stuff that works, all boats rise together. So really interesting and quick way that you can get some extra play. So that is what we have got for you this month in the low cost environment, higher risk actions, testing out a new checkout process, something like Samcart, working on new management tools like Marpipe, and then the fallback ad SKUs. Hopefully that's something you can add to your quiver to produce some more results for you in the month of September. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we can do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to Decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.